Hello, everybody. So excited to have my friend David, Super Dave Leath, on the show. He's a retired veteran law enforcement officer, and now he's doing great things, helping you, the first
not
responder.
Retired yet.
Not retired.
I'm still active duty. Yeah, that's okay.
Hey, if
a lot of people think that.
Employers are listening, he's still on the job.
I don't know for how much longer, but yes, I still am.
Thank you for being here, brother. We recently connected, and you're doing great things. You do a lot of business, and I know you transitioned over from law enforcement into business. You had a 20-year career in law enforcement, correct?
25 years at this point, yeah.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
I did 23.
It's time.
I did 23.
It's time. It's definitely time.
Now, what can you – everybody's talking, everybody always is or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are fascinated with what cops do, law enforcement professionals. But it's not, I tell people, it's not what you see in the movies. It's not what you see on TV. That's kind of like the glorified version of law enforcement. You know that.
Yes.
What's one of the highs in your career? And then I want to ask you one of your lows, because we all have them. So what was the highest point in your career? Name an instance where you were like, shit, I'm glad I'm a cop. I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing.
So I used to do a lot of car stops. I was in this community policing unit that did a lot of parades. But when we weren't doing that, we were doing enforcement activities. So I used to do a lot of car stops. I loved doing car stops. I did it for so long that I was out there doing car stops for 17 years as a street cop. I was a very active street cop. And one night we had just finished a car stop, and someone came, eyes bulging, panicked. He's like, "That gas station's being robbed." And we hightail it. It's just over the train tracks.
Yeah.
And as we get over the tracks, we see a guy running with a gun in his hand. He's got like the sack in one hand and the gun in the other hand. And we hop out, and I yell gun, and we both draw down on him, and I tell him to drop it, and he drops it. Actually, I saw him throw it down.
Yeah.
And I was like, phew, thank God for that. And then we chased him. He ended up being responsible for like 19 robberies. And I got
a lot of cases closed.
Yeah. A lot of our stuff was self-actuated.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Self-initiated.
Self-initiated. That's the word I was thinking of. Self-initiated actualization. I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of our stuff was self-initiated, so we got a good reputation, and we were able to move on to that community unit, and that was like one of my highlights on patrol. But while in that community unit, I was doing I think I was doing DWI patrol one night, and I happened to do a U-turn underneath an overpass. I put my lights on, did a U-turn, and there was a woman at the intersection that saw me doing the U-turn, and even though she had the green light, she just paused for like an extra half a second to see what I was doing. And another woman in an SUV came barreling through the red light. She was in like a Yukon, like a big SUV.
Mm-hmm.
And she came barreling through, and she made my car rock. And I'm like, oh my God. So I put the overheads on. I pull her over, and she was in tox. And the woman who had almost been hit by her came up, and she was crying in tears, and she had like her 3 little girls in the car. And she's like, oh my God, if you hadn't spun around, she's like, we would have been smashed. We would have been smashed by that woman. And she's like, I just paused for an extra second because I saw you had your lights on. She's like, I was trying to see what you were doing. And I was just making a simple U-turn. And I almost got crushed by this DWI also. And the woman was so incredibly grateful that was one of those nights that I was like, hands on the hip. And I was like, yes, I am Super Dave. Proud to wear the uniform. I was always super, super proud to be in uniform.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when I was at work, I was always proud to be in the uniform, proud to represent for men and women in uniform and those of color in uniform also when I worked in you know those types of neighborhoods. So I was always proud to represent. But when people would ask me what I did for a living, uh, outside of work, I never wanted to say that I was a cop for a number of reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like you never know who's going to judge you. You never know who's listening. Um, I it wasn't that I was ashamed of the job. I just didn't want to have those conversations when I wasn't working. You know?
Yeah,
Did you
because
ever feel like that?
oh yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, but well, and this is what I tell people, Dave. I mean, you probably know this. I mean, that you probably experienced it. I know I did. The friends that I had before I became a cop were no longer my friends when I became a cop. Not because I
Yeah.
did something wrong. It's just because a lot of them didn't want to associate with me anymore because I was one of them. I was,
Yeah.
oh shit. I'm like, we're going to go to a party and, Pat's going to, say, get us in trouble. I mean, just stupid shit like that. But, but I'm glad it happened the way it did because, if those friends are going to judge me because I wear a badge, I probably don't want those friends in my life. You know what I mean?
What's funny is when I started dating my girlfriend, she would call me narc boy. And I never worked in narcotics. I never worked in narco, but she would call me narc boy.
But as a cop of color, as an African American police officer, I bet you. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, it was probably more rough for you. I imagine. Where people were like, you were afraid, right? To tell people, to tell people that you were a cop, or you didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I also always thought that I was gonna go undercover and do narcotics, so I never wanted to put myself out there and like be known as a cop. But everyone already knew it anyway. Everyone I grew up with.
Did people give you shit about? Did people give you shit about it?
No, actually, most of my friends that I grew up with, they respected it, and they were just like, "Yeah, that life is not for me, but good for you."
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple, friends that are African American, they're black, that they said that their neighborhoods, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, "Fuck that shit, we're not dealing with you anymore," which is sad.
Yeah. No, I think like a lot of my friends became teachers or they went into the Coast Guard. So like I always had a good circle around me. So they went into respected careers also.
Good.
And they kind of respected what I did, but they always said not for me.
So that was the highs. I mean, I can relate to that too, and just a side note, I mean, people, when you talk about traffic stops, I know there's some cops out there, there's, routine. First of all, there's nothing routine about a traffic stop. Second, you never know what you're going to catch on a traffic stop. I mean, the Oklahoma City bomber was caught on a traffic stop.
Joel Rifkin was caught on a traffic stop.
So you don't know what it's like a Cracker Jack box. You never know what you're going to get as a prize when you pull over that car. I mean, I've caught, more warrants, more DUIs, like you said, crazy stuff on traffic stops. So, I mean,
I was really proud. I was really proud of my eye. Like, just like I could sit at an intersection and I would look for the nervous person. And I was really, really proud of, like, I really thought I was a great street cop. And I have a lot of awards to back that up. I got cop of the year. I got a bunch of cop of the month awards. I was really active in a very active precinct.
And people
very busy.
Oh, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say I was a very active street cop. And the lows, to answer that question, was once I started feeling, I was in that unit for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I started getting burnt out of doing car stops. Like, it was so like, there was days when I would just like sit under the train tracks and be like, I don't know if I could do this today. And I was really starting to get burnt. And my partner, he got promoted to sergeant. My sergeant, who I loved, got promoted to lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And they both, so it was like they both left at a very close and pivotal time. And I started feeling that was like my lowest time. I was like, okay, everyone in this unit's getting younger. I'm not getting younger. I've been here for too long. 10 years is I could have left it sooner. But I was having so much fun and I was having such a good time that I stayed probably 3 to 4 years too long. They asked me if I wanted to go into a plainclothes unit, and I didn't want to do that because it was just it was like petty larcenies and school incidences, and I had no desire. I had no desire to do that stuff, but that was the path towards detective. But the other path that I saw other people take was they went to narcotics, and I was like, I want to take that path, but that wasn't available for me because of the administration, the people that were in at the time. I didn't have any phone calls, any cranes, any hooks that could pull me into the unit. It's a funny story. My sergeant that I loved, who ended up becoming the detective lieutenant for narcotics, he was there, but I was already made detective at that point, and I was already in. So what happened was I got the phone call from my inspector, and he's like, I know you. He's like, I got good news and bad news. Good news is you're being promoted. And he's like, and I'm like, okay, what's the bad news? He's like, I know you wanted to go to narcotics, but we're sending you to special victims. I didn't let out the sigh on the phone. I just said, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I hung up and I sat on the couch all deflated. And I was like, oh God, I gotta go to special victims.
Yeah.
Scratched my head a little bit, and then I sat down. And this is a true story. I turned on Law and Order SVU.
That's what I was thinking about when you said SVU.
And I know it's nothing like that. I know it's just TV, but like I needed to just escape a little bit from that blow. But once I got to the unit, I actually really liked it. It was a party pooper telling people like where I worked. Yeah. Like I remember being on vacation in Colombia and people were like, oh, you're a detective? Where do you work? And I was like, yeah, I'm in special victims. I work with sexually and physically abused kids, 0 to 18 years old. And you feel the whole mood of the whole entire pool go, oh, like, oh.
Anyway, how about those?
That sucks for you, yeah.
So what else
do you do? Yeah. I had some really, really good cases though, and I really enjoyed it.
Cases.
And I also it was horrendous. That unit was horrendous, but it was very busy, very rewarding when we did make an arrest, because everyone there was like legit bad guys. And I went to court a lot also because nobody wants to be labeled a sex offender.
Yeah, I mean, I hated those cases. I mean, I worked a lot of them. I wasn't a detective that just dealt with those cases, but the way it was in my agency is the detective bureau had all these different types of cases, and those are just horrible cases, brother. I mean, to work, I know that. I mean, some people are just evil.
I know, and then some of them are so horrendous that that even a jury can't believe that the person was capable of doing it. So you have that against you too.
Yeah. And it's not just. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I had a 75-year-old. One of my last cases, I had a 75-year-old grandfather that had tied down his 12-year-old granddaughter and did things to her, and it was like unbelievable. That guy got convicted. I had a lot of good evidence, but that was just like one of those cases that like no one could believe that was possible, that someone would be capable of that.
Yeah.
Bizarre stuff. Like he was putting his dead wife's underwear on her, and like her dead wife's lingerie is like I think he lost his mind a little bit, but even still, that's no excuse.
Yeah, that's no excuse.
The father was like beside himself and livid and wanted to kill his own father. This is his daughter, his own father. He's like wanted to kill a guy. And like sometimes I think about that young lady and I want to reach out, but I did two and a half, almost 3 years in that unit. And then I said, okay, enough's enough. And I went to the general squad doing robberies and kind of like your detective division. sex assaults, robberies. And the funny thing is, once I got to the general squad, they used to call me the sexpert. So like
You
any
got all
sex
kinds of
cases,
names, Dave. You
all
got
kinds of names.
the
I've had
narc, you got Super
all kinds of
Dave, you got
names.
Sexpert.
All kinds of names. Yeah, they love to give me the sex cases because I was actually very empathetic
Yeah.
with the victims, even though like the adult cases, a lot of them were actually regret and not rape.
Yeah.
You know, it was like they got drunk, they don't know if they had sex or not. It was very different, very, very different than what I had been used
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And then in some of these cases, I mean, because I've worked those cases before too, where people are intoxicated and then
yes,
and usually the evidence is gone, time has
yes,
passed and
yes.
now they're like, it's a he said, she said kind of.
It's terrible. Those are the worst.
Those are the worst because something happened. There's no in some of these cases, I mean, okay, sex happened, that was
Yeah.
okay, that happened. But now it's whether it was consensual or not.
I had a good one where the girl had gone on 2 dates. She slept with them on the first night. No one in my office liked it. The second night, she said he was making her feel uncomfortable because he was talking like they were much deeper into a relationship. He was talking like about the future and like getting married and like calling the dog theirs. And she was just like, she said the second day she went to his house, she just wasn't feeling him, and he pulled off her pants and did what he did, had her crying on the couch, and no one in my office liked it. But something, I think it was where she worked, she was just, to me, felt very credible and very legit. So I pursued it, and I was able to record the guy apologizing to her, saying
Oh
that he
wow, there
took
you
things
go.
too far, and
That
it was the nail in the coffin.
pretext phone call, that right there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had
We were
her,
able.
you had the victim call him, right? And then record it.
Yes, a
Yeah, yeah.
three-way control
Yeah,
call. Yep.
three-way control call. If I
So
can
in
talk.
New York, you don't have to, in as long as it's not eavesdropping, as long as one party is
One
aware.
party. That's same in Colorado, or is the same in Colorado. As long as one party's
Okay.
aware of it, then it's not illegal.
Not illegal, not eavesdropping.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the catalyst, brother? Um what was the catalyst that said, okay, I'm done with law enforcement? Was it just you hit your pension, or was it something else, or
No,
what
it
was the
was a slow
catalyst?
it was a slow winter night where the phones weren't ringing, and I was just bored,
Yeah,
and I was just thinking about like how I was thinking about how my career went, and it's been a long career, and I was thinking about having like I had a bigger vision for what I could be doing, and like standing on stages and having
yeah.
my own podcast, and
Which you do.
having, yes, which I do, the Hero Academy by
Yeah,
Super
yeah,
Dave.
yeah, yeah. Super Dave.
Um oh, so yeah, so it was just like I was walking through the hallway bored, and I had like, it was like it was a little bit of burnout, a little bit of boredom, and a little bit of bigger vision for myself. Those three things. And I've always had a very, very active imagination. So like when I would walk through the hallway, I'd like hold my arms up like Superman and be like I'm flying through the hallways.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I would sit in the bathroom sometimes until my legs went numb on my phone, until the lights went out. And I'm like, okay, something's got to change. Like this is a clue. It's time for change.
Well, that's the
And a lot of people
universe or
can,
whatever. It's the universe
yeah,
giving you a nudge, brother, saying, "Hey, you got to do something
yeah,
different."
a lot of people can relate to that
Yeah,
boredom.
I can.
You and I, we talked about how a lot of people think the job is mostly it's like 99% paperwork, and that 1% excitement, like
Yeah,
people live for the, but even the foot pursuits, the car chases, and locking up people gets old.
yeah,
It all gets old after a while. Everything gets old. You have to change. For anyone that's still active duty, you have to change every 3 to 5 years. You have to make a change if your department is big enough. And if it's not big enough, like I know some people work those dozen person departments,
hmm,
and there's no chance of changing anything. So you have to do something outside of work. And for me, it was podcasting and speaking and coaching people to start businesses. So
Yeah.
that's what it was for me.
And you're very good at it, Dave, and you're very successful at it.
Thank you.
And I tell first responders, the ones I talk to, and I don't know if you do the same, is I think a lot of first responders think they're pigeonholed, especially cops who have done it a long time. They think they're pigeonholed into doing something like, okay, I'm going to retire.
Security.
I'm going to do security. And there's nothing wrong to the listener. There's nothing wrong with security. But I think cops think, well, I can only do a couple things. And the reality is you can do whatever you want. But we've been conditioned, I think, just by the culture of law enforcement.
Institutionalized.
It's institutionalized where we can't do anything else. I'm going to go work security or some shit like that. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. But there's so much more you can do. And I know you help people do that.
Yes, I do. So it begins with your identity. So where Super Dave comes from is it's on brand. So the Hero Academy is all about what society calls heroes. A lot of people hear the title and they say, I'm no hero. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I say to them, listen, I'm not going to call you a hero. That's not what it's about. It's about what society calls heroes. And it's more about, like, when I have you on, it's more about your career and what you're doing now and like what you plan on doing. That's what it's really about. It's just to give people ideas for side hustles they can do now or after they retire. It's so much better when you decide to do something and you decide to go after it and you decide how much effort and how many hours you want to put into it. Like if you want to take the day off, I just spoke to a guy today. He said he takes off the whole month of June and he teaches people how to pass promotional exams and he makes a full-time living from just doing that. And then he takes off the whole month of June and travels.
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities available for first responders, law enforcement, and nurses and military post-career, or even while they're still working. Some people get hung up on the idea of, I can't have my name out there in the public, in the internet. And I'm like, you can have an alias. Authors have pen names all the time. For the longest time, my name on Facebook was David DM, like Carpe Diem, DIEM. And then just recently I changed it to David Leath because I don't put anything out that's controversial. It's all positive stuff. I stay away from politics. I stay away from talking about anything that could potentially get me jammed up. I've always considered myself smart. So, and that's my advice to any of your listeners, that if you're concerned about your agency, your department that you work for, or if you work for, any kind of agency, just don't put out anything that could be considered controversial, and you don't have to use your real name. There's a lot of things that you don't have to, pen names, for example. A lot of authors use pen names. Sia, for example, doesn't show her face when she performs. She's just like, she's this international star and she chooses to not show her face. There's a lot of YouTube channels where people are just speaking into a microphone like this and they're not showing their face. So there are a lot of different ways that you can be public without actually putting your face, your name, or your family out there.
But I believe too, and that's great advice, Dave. But I believe too that if you want to get to that next level in whatever you want to do, maybe it's a side gig or something,
personal brand,
you have to take some risks.
Yes.
Shit's just not going to fall in your lap. So if you want to be successful, if you want to start that, write a book or start a show or whatever, you have to take some risk, calculated risk, well thought out risk.
Calculated risk, yes.
But to your point, I mean, you can change things up. You don't have to show your face and all that stuff. Well, your best advice is don't talk about anything controversial. Be like Switzerland. Be neutral.
Yes.
Don't go to either side unless you're like,
And if you want to speak about politics and if you want to be polarizing,
I was going to say,
then just be prepared. Be prepared to get a lot of backlash and be prepared to walk away from your career and just do that full time, because
I don't do that
will
stuff.
come back.
Yeah, I
That will
don't.
come back on you.
If
It
you
will.
are like some big shot and you make a living off talking about politics or something, okay, that's great. But those people make a ton of money and stuff like that, and that's what they're known for. But I'm with you. I mean, I try to put the positive in the first responder field, and yeah, we talk about some bad stuff, but I try to remain neutral because I just don't want to fall into one of those categories. You know what I mean?
Or characters either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, like, somebody that is you probably get this question, I imagine, Dave. What advice would you give somebody who's thinking about a career as a first responder, say cop, law enforcement?
So my key piece of advice that I give someone that's thinking about a law enforcement career is, don't settle on just the town that you live in. Do a little bit of research with Google, make a little spreadsheet, and make a list of the top 10 departments that are around you. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you don't want to go halfway across the country, but I would say start with pay, and then start with department size also. And because a larger department, you're going to have more opportunities to move around and do more units. I know guys that work in small village departments, and they have 20 members, and their entire career will be on patrol, which there's nothing wrong with patrol. I love to patrol. But if you want to see different units, different aspects of your department, it's better to be in a larger department that has a few hundred members versus a few dozen. So make a list of the departments, and then make a list of their starting salaries and their top pay. Did you know that they're like, I'm in New York. So just outside of New York, everyone thinks about NYPD, New York City. But just outside of New York City, there's dozens and dozens of police departments.
Oh yeah.
That they're some of the highest paid in the country. I think there's a place called Clarkstown. I have to look this up, but a few of their officers made like $300K.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to put people's business out there, but it's in the papers.
That's public.
It's public knowledge. But the Port Authority, they make a killing. Those guys, like, on the low end, they're doing $250 a year. $250 a year on the low end with overtime. And then on the high end, you have guys that are over $300K.
Yeah.
And then you have Nassau and Suffolk counties, which are just outside of New York City. And you have, 200K cops there, like cops on midnights that are just like killing it between the night differential and the overtime.
Yeah.
They're killing it. And then you have departments that are smaller across the country where, guys are starting out at $20 an hour, like so there's a big disparity in also in California. There's some very high paid departments.
Yes. But but it balances out, that, because cost of living, and especially in California, New York's expensive.
New York is expensive, and but I believe that the property taxes are actually less in California than they are in New York.
Wow.
Some areas are extreme. No, but what the price of a home, what you get in California, in some areas, like the square footage is going to be smaller, but your property taxes might be lower.
Yeah.
Here on Long Island, we have people that are paying $1,000 a month in taxes, $12,000 a year, outside of their mortgage. So say the mortgage is $2,000 a month, that you tack on an additional $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a month in just property taxes. And it's just, it's crazy expensive. So yes, things are expensive, but the officers in those surrounding areas outside of New York City do very well. So you can live in an area that doesn't cost that much and make a very, very good wage.
Yeah.
So that's in short, I would say, do some research on salary, find out what the guys are making at top pay, and then do a comparison of the size of the departments. And don't just think that you have to just take the test where you live. Take multiple tests I took about a half dozen different tests, and I got called for all of them. I was a pretty good test taker.
Yeah.
I got called for the city in like 4 months, went through that whole process. I did more than half the academy. I had a month left to graduate, and then I went in directly into another academy, my current job, and did 11 straight months of academy time at 22 and 23 years old. I was in sick shape because I was training
Yeah.
for a year before going into the academy, and then training for that whole year of getting paid while being in the academy. I loved being in the academy.
Yeah.
Some people hated it. I was soaking it all up. I'm like,
Yeah. I
they're
like
paying
the
us for this.
academy. Yeah. I like being in
Yeah,
the
they're paying
academy.
us for this. My dream was to go back and be an instructor after like 7 years. But 7 years on the job, I found myself on midnights, and I was being like a really good cop, like finding guns and drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
And we would just, and I was young too. So I was training jujitsu. I was young. I was getting into foot pursuits and having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a good time back then.
Yeah. It's
And I
good.
had
I
a
mean,
really good partner too.
and it's a great career, and I know things have changed since I retired, and I know you're still
Did
on
you
the
go the
job.
supervisor route?
Yes, I did. I was a
You
commander
went the supervisor route.
when I
Yeah.
retired. I was an op commander, and but the best time I ever had, Dave, was when I was a street cop.
Mm.
That was the best time I ever had in my life because it's the best. It's the greatest show on earth, especially on patrol.
Second best was probably a patrol sergeant.
Yeah, patrol sergeant. That is the heartbeat of an organization. I mean, everybody's important, but those street supervisors, those sergeants, the corporals, if you have them, we had corporals, but mainly the sergeants. They're the glue. They're keeping all the shit in line. You know what I mean? They act as the buffer between the higher ups and the street cops.
Yep.
And if you get a good patrol sergeant, life is a lot easier.
Yes, it is. And then if he has good people working for
Oh,
him,
absolutely. And it
and
was so funny, the sergeants, brother. You probably know this. We used to bid, for seniority and stuff, and all the good sergeants, people would just kind of flock to them. And follow the sergeants around.
Yep. Yeah, you have a good boss. You want to stick to him like glue.
Well, how do people find you, Dave? I mean, you're doing great work. You did so much in law enforcement. How if people want to reach out to you?
I'm most active. My social media most active is Instagram and Insta. Yeah, I just like scrolling through the photo. It's quick, I don't mess with TikTok very much. I'm on there, but I don't mess with it much. Instagram is Coach Super Dave and the number 1. So it's Coach Super Dave 1. And on LinkedIn, it's just my name, I believe. I believe it's just David Leath.
No, it just says Super Dave. Super Dave. No.
Does it?
No, I'm just kidding.
You could have convinced me because I have that out there a lot. The podcast is The Hero Academy by Super Dave. So that's just stories of men and women in uniform, healthcare professionals, military, nurses, firemen, and police officers, people that are on the front lines and what they're doing on the side, their side hustles, and it's all about the careers, similar to your show.
Yeah.
And I just love talking to this community of people because I know that their hearts are in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
We all want to make money, but no one started their career for that reason.
No.
Most started because they have a heart of service. They want to serve.
Yeah.
And that's why I love this greater community of civil servants.
Yeah. Well, you're still doing great work, brother. You're still on the job. Thank you so much for your service. And I know you're going to be retiring sometime.
Very, very, very soon. I just don't. Everyone keeps asking me when. I don't know. I know it's soon. I'm lining up a lot of things. Has anyone ever told you have a great radio voice?
Dude, yeah. I'm not saying that in a cocky, shitty, arrogant kind of way.
No, I just said it. I just said it.
But people have told me that before.
You sound like a radio host. Like you,
Dude, then why don't you hook me up
I know
with a
you've been
radio?
podcasting. You've been podcasting for like 10 years, right?
Well, it's about like 7.5, 8 years, but why don't you
Yeah,
hook me up
even
with a
still, that
radio
you're
gig? Hook me up, dude. You know people. You're in the Big Apple. You're in Long
you
Island.
don't need a radio gig. You just need to keep doing your thing. Do your thing. You don't need a radio gig. Hey, I'm going to Denver in August for the podcast movement. It's a big podcast convention.
What? I didn't hear about that.
I'll send you the details. Hopefully,
All right.
hopefully you can make it. Are you far from Denver?
I'm in Scottsdale,
like
buddy.
out-
I'm like an hour and a half away on a flight.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll send you the details. It's called Podcast Movement. And it's actually really, really good.
Cool. All right, brother.
Yeah, hopefully we can link up.
Super Dave Leath, thank you so much, my friend. Everything we talked about, my listeners, is going to be in the show notes, including ways to contact Dave. Thank you so much, brother, for your service, your continued service. Much luck to you in the future. I'm always here if you need anything, brother, and take care of yourself.
Thank you. I forgot to mention I have a book coming out called The Heroic Coaching Blueprint. I forgot to mention.
Nice.
I cannot not plug the
Well,
book.
you got to plug it, and then you when you come out, before it comes out, come back on the show.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself.